Greetings everyone. Today, I bring you a new video with truly terrifying stories that won't let you sleep. If you enjoy these stories, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, because these stories deserve it, and comment from which part of the world you're watching us. Every night, a young man waited by his bedroom window. Not because he couldn't sleep, not because he had nowhere to be, but because of her. At exactly 10:23 p.m., she would turn the corner at the end of his street, always on time, always alone. It didn't matter if it was a weekday or a weekend. She never missed a night. She wore a green school uniform, thick leggings, and a long, dark coat that covered most of her despite the heat. Her face was almost entirely hidden beneath a curtain of black hair that fell all the way to her waist. He only ever caught a glimpse, just a sliver of pale skin between the moving strands, before she disappeared around the next corner. The whole thing lasted maybe 30 seconds, but for him, it happened in slow motion. Those 30 seconds were the best part of his day. Her hair, darker than the night sky, would catch the moonlight as she walked and turned silver at the edges, swaying as if it had a life of its own, even in the lightest breeze. Her steps made no sound at all. No footfall, no echo, nothing. Just the silent movement of someone passing through the world without disturbing it. He didn't know her name. He didn't know where she came from or where she was going at that hour. But he was completely, helplessly in love. And one night, he decided to do something about it. He climbed out through his window and followed her. He just wanted to catch up to her, ask her name, walk her home, get her number, anything to close the distance between them, even by a little. When he turned the corner, she was already in the middle of the park. A group of guys had surrounded her. Loud, aggressive, the kind that owned the dark parts of the neighborhood after midnight. She kept walking, head down, ignoring them, moving quietly through the harassing voices, like she didn't hear a single word. He was about to run toward her, but then she reached the darkest part of the park, where the trees grew thick and the streetlights gave up entirely. And she stopped. She reached up slowly and pulled the hair away from her face. She was smiling. It was the most beautiful smile he had ever seen. Wide, luminous, the kind of smile that stops time. He stood frozen at the edge of the tree line, unable to move, unable to breathe. And then she turned toward the group of guys. What happened next took less than a minute. She drove her teeth, long, sharp, impossible, into the first one before he could make a sound. She lifted him off the ground with one hand, effortlessly, like he weighed nothing at all, and tore into him with a hunger that was almost elegant in its violence. Then the next, then the next. The sounds that came from the dark part of the park were not the kind of sounds he had words for, and as she fed, her hair shifted and parted, revealing something folded underneath. Small, dark wings that beat rapidly with each bite, each kill, trembling with pleasure against her shoulder blades. He watched all of it and felt nothing but love. The blood on her lips only made him want to kiss her. The beating of those wings only made him want to hold her before she disappeared into the sky. He pressed himself against a tree trunk and watched her in her full, terrible, magnificent reality, and understood that what he felt had not changed at all. If anything, it had deepened. He finished. She straightened. She let her hair fall back around her face, and then she looked directly at him. For just a moment, she smiled again, softer this time, almost gentle, and he understood in that instant that to her he was nothing more than dessert after a very satisfying dinner. He didn't run. Maybe she had done something to him in that look. Maybe it was something else entirely. We don't know. What we do know is this: the most terrifying things in the world will fill most people with fear. But for that young man, standing at the edge of a dark park at 10:23 p.m., the fear never came. Only love. Love, as it turns out, appears exactly where you least expect it, even in the most horrible things that exist in this life. The first day Bella showed up at the state library, nobody was ready for it. Her school had sent her for extra credit. The man who ran the place, 30 years behind the same desk, same reading glasses, same cardigan, had no interest in a teenager disrupting his system. So he gave her the general stacks, the common shelves, and made it very clear that the restricted section was off limits. That was his first mistake. Bella had never responded well to the word off limits. Every rule he laid down landed in her head as a dare. Within the first week, she was pulling books from the restricted shelves, tucking them under her arm, and walking out with them like she owned the building. She'd read a few pages at home, decide they were boring, and toss them in the corner of her room. She still couldn't figure out what the old man was so worked up about. They were just books. Then she picked up the one with no title. It was bound in leather, like several others on the shelf. But this one was different. The skin. And that was the word that came to mind. Skin. Not leather. It was unusually thin. Almost translucent. Smooth in a way that made you want to keep touching it. There was no title on the cover. No author. No publisher's mark. No illustration. Nothing on the spine. Just that surface, unmarked and pale, inviting her fingers to run across it. The most logical thing to do was open it. When she did, a faint draft moved through the room, even though no window was open. She felt it first at her feet, then rising slowly up through her body. It was a journal. The handwriting was careful, deliberate, almost beautiful. And what it described was unlike anything she had ever read. Not horror in the way movies were horror. This was something else entirely. Detailed, methodical, personal. Accounts of things done to people, the worst things, written the way someone might write about a walk in the park or a meal they enjoyed. She should have closed it. She didn't. In 10 pages, her mind was already coming apart at the edges. Each page contained a separate account, a separate person, a separate act, and there were hundreds of pages left. She didn't have time to read them all, so she did what she shouldn't have done. She skipped to the end. The final entries were worse than the first, as if whoever wrote them had refined something over years of practice, as if the early pages were amateur work compared to what came later. She closed the journal and didn't sleep. The next morning, she went back to the library. She walked up to the desk and placed the journal in front of the librarian with both hands. She told him she had disobeyed him. She apologized. She said she was sorry, more than once. The old man picked up the journal. He smiled, not warmly, not the way someone smiles when they accept an apology, the way someone smiles when something has gone exactly according to plan. "Don't worry," he said, turning the journal over slowly in his hands. "All you've done by reading this is give me something to write about." He paused. "If you want to know what became of Bella, just look up the librarian. He dedicates a full page to her. Page 327, to be exact." Something has been wrong with our house for days now. It started as a feeling, the kind you can't explain to anyone without sounding paranoid. That constant, pressing sensation of being watched. A weight that settles on your shoulders the moment you walk through the door and doesn't lift until you leave. You turn around and catch something at the edge of your vision, like a person ducking out of sight just a fraction of a second too late. My kids started telling me they could see pale children peering in through the windows. I didn't say anything back. I didn't want to frighten them more than they already were. But the truth is, I had been keeping something to myself, something that happened to me that I was afraid to share, because I knew it would make everything worse. One night, I was pulled out of sleep by a light. It came through the bedroom window and hit me directly in the eyes. Bright, focused, wrong. My first thought was a flashlight, a car, something ordinary. So I got up to close the curtain. When I got close enough to reach for it, I saw the face. It was pressed against the glass from outside, pale and drawn, the skin dry and cracked like something that hadn't been properly alive for a very long time. Its eyes were glassy, deep red, and they moved, slowly, mechanically, from side to side, like they were scanning me, taking inventory. I stood there and looked at it, not because I wanted to, because I couldn't move. My legs had stopped working entirely. My arms weighed 1,000 pounds each. I couldn't lift a single finger to pull the curtain. Couldn't take a step backward. Couldn't make a sound. I was just standing there, inches from the glass, staring at that face while it stared back at me. And it was smiling. Not a human smile. Something that understood what a smile was supposed to communicate and was using it deliberately, methodically, because it knew exactly what it was doing to me. I don't know how long I stood there. At some point, the paralysis shifted into something else, a complete loss of structure, like my bones had dissolved. My legs gave out. I was going down, and then a hand touched my back. If I hadn't heard my wife's voice in the same instant, if I hadn't understood in that fraction of a second that it was her hand, I don't think I would have survived it. Not the fall. Something else. Something that was already happening inside me. In the days that followed, I refused to let the lights go off. I would pretend to read until she fell asleep. But I wasn't reading. I was sitting there in the lamplight, completely rigid with fear, too afraid to close my eyes. Because every time I did, the face was there, and each time it was closer than the last. I could feel its hands on me, a pressure I couldn't explain and couldn't make stop. In the mornings, the bedroom smelled wrong. A thick, stale, rotten smell with no source. There were faint marks on the sheets, like ash or dust, in shapes that looked like faces. My wrists had scratches I didn't put there. So far, this has only happened to me. Or maybe it's happening to all of us. And we're each staying quiet to keep from making it worse. I don't know what to do. I know I need to get my family out of this house. I just hope it isn't already too late, that whatever has found us here will let us leave, and that it hasn't already decided to follow.